Hi, I'm Sarah and I'm here at the library. You might be wondering why I brought my firewood in. I'm not going to start a fire. We're going to do an art project today that has to do with tree rings. Wood is really important for all of us, and it's been important for the people who live in this part of Alaska since there have been people living in this part of Alaska. And we still rely on wood. You might know that if you look at the rings of a tree, can you see those circles in there? All those circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that if I count all of those rings, we can tell how old this tree is. The reason why there's rings is that trees are made of cells. So are we. All living things are made of cells, which are little living units. And in trees, when they're growing fast, they make big cells. And when they're growing slow, they make small cells. So trees, in the early summer, when there's plenty of water and sunshine, they grow fast and they make big cells. And those big cells are far apart, so they make a light-colored band. And then when it gets to be fall and winter, the tree is growing more slowly, the cells are closer together, and they make a dark-colored band. So that's why trees have rings. When we look at the rings, we can tell how old the tree is, but that's not the only thing we can tell. Some of the rings are far apart. That has to do with the weather and the climate that this tree was living through. When it has plenty of water and sunshine, it grows really fast and makes big cells. Some of the rings are close together. That could mean the tree didn't have a lot of water and sunshine and didn't have a good growing season, so it couldn't make very many large cells. So a tree, when it's cut like this, is a little bit like a history book. You can look back and see what the weather was like. Now, you can't really tell from just one tree because it could just be that this one tree had something difficult happening to it, like some other tree was stealing all the water. But if you looked at a bunch of trees from the same place, you could see if they all had the skinny rings in the same place. This is something scientists do to study the history of our climate, and that's pretty cool. Our climate is changing, and one way we can see that, just one way, there are lots of other ways, but one way is by looking at tree rings. This birch log is only half of a log. Does that mean I can't find out how old the tree was? I can, because I only need to count from the very middle of the tree, which is right here, out to the outside. This spot right in the middle is the tree when it was just tiny, the first year. And out here, of course, this is the tree now. So as long as I can see that circle, I can know the whole age of the tree. Let's look at this one, because you can see it better. There in the middle is the tree, its first year, and out here is the tree right before it was cut down. So that's all well and good, but you may be wondering, when are we getting to the art part? Well, here's a picture, a tree ring picture I did. And you can see this would be the tree when it was just a baby, and this is the fully grown tree. I didn't put in as many rings as a real tree because that would be too much work. I did my rings with a dark line, and that would be those small cells that happen in the winter. And then I shaded in, and I used a colored pencil. You could also use a crayon. I want to show you one more thing. Right around the outside edge, I put a bright green line. And I did that because on a real tree, there is some green there, and that's where the tree is growing. Those are the growing cells of the tree. That's called the cambium. If you take a tree branch in the spring and you peel off the bark and it feels slimy on the inside, that's the cambium. And actually, on a willow, if you kind of chew on that stuff, I think it tastes like watermelon. The cambium is where it grows. So the tree grows from the outside. It just keeps adding on and adding on and adding on. It was fun to make this. But then I thought, Imagine that you had a tree and you cut it, and instead of being kind of brown and cream on the inside, it was all kinds of colors. That's what I wanted to try today. I drew my outside, and then I've started to make colored lines. I used markers for my dark lines, but you could also use crayons or colored pencils. So on this little tree, this would be the baby tree, and every year it makes new wood going out. Now I'm going to color hard next to the dark line and then shading lighter as I go in. For this part, you have to use something like a crayon or a colored pencil that's darker when you press harder. Imagine how surprised you would be if you cut open a tree and found something like that inside. It's kind of like a treasure, isn't it? Well, I want to show you one more thing that I was surprised to find inside our firewood. Look at that. That's kind of cool looking, isn't it? It actually isn't a good thing because it means that there's fungus growing in our wood, which means we didn't do a good job of storing it nice and dry. Because we left the bark on the outside and didn't split it, it was probably too wet and some fungus got to grow in it. And that's not as good for the wood. It does look kind of cool though, doesn't it? You could do a tree ring picture like that if you wanted. I hope you had fun exploring tree rings and learning a little bit about how trees grow, always from the outside. I hope you enjoyed the craft.